Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Welcome to Cornhusker Corner with Blake.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
I'm Brooks.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
And you better bet your bottom dollar that these two brothers know how to handle business.
Here's a hand up to Thunder, who gives it back to Mike Stokes. He's going to throw it. He's got a man out. Yeah! 40. It is. Eric Crouch. 15, 10.
All right, welcome to Cornhusker Corner, where there's no place like this podcast. As always, we're your host, Blake, my brother, Brooks. Thank you for listening. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Listen to us anywhere podcasts are found for the audio-only version. And if you're on the audio-only version and you want to see our ugly mugs, just YouTube Cornhusker Corner, and there we are. Follow us on X at @CHusker_corner and Instagram Cornhusker Corner. So here we go. Let's just hop right into it because this is going to be our Maryland recap episode, our therapy session. So I know that you were not as
I was at the Ren Fair.
Yeah, you were not following every play that I was.
Yes.
But you have to come away from this game feeling frustrated because, one, I want to give Maryland credit because just from the what I saw on the field, that's probably the best team talent-wise that we've played in. I mean, probably since Michigan, honestly. I mean, you just look at
everything is
positions.
Except Michigan when we say things like this. But yes, except Michigan, they're probably the most talented team we've played.
Yeah. From just a roster perspective,
especially skill positions. They had some skill position guys that I was looking at that I was like, oh, okay, that's a dude. That's a dude.
No, some of their receivers made some plays and extended drives. I mean, that being said, on their offense side of the ball, and that being said, like their defense didn't have to do much because our offense is so inept.
No joke.
But still, like they came out and they were on a 4-game losing skid, and if they lost that, they were going to go 5, and then really they had Michigan and Rutgers left. So if you're a Maryland fan and you were looking at this game, this is our last quote unquote like winnable one. Our Rutgers could be argued for them too, but they did what they needed to do by scoring 13 points. I guess that's all you needed to do.
Crazy.
That's what frustrates me the most about the game is like you look at it statistically, the defense did get driven up and down a little bit more than we're used to, but again, they made some plays that you can't really defend against.
They did, and our defense at moments rose up so well.
Yes.
I mean, they gave us so many chances to win that game. And it's just frustrating that a similar conversation seems to happen every week. But I guess now that the offense, I mean, I didn't want to believe how bad the offense it was. I mean, maybe up until last week, but now that we know, just like they've proven it to us, like how bad they are, it's almost like the approach you want to take to looking at the games coming up is like, okay, how many points does our offense need to score in order to secure the victory for Nebraska? And on this game, I felt the number was about 17. I felt that if we scored 17, we could win that game, and that ended up being true. But I mean, 5 turnovers, right? It was 5 turnovers.
Yeah.
4 interceptions and 1 fumble.
Actually, yeah. I mean, probably
because I know Sims had a fumble and 1 interception. I know Heinrich, I think, had 2 interceptions and Purdy's at the end. But yeah, it's just frustrating. Similar conversation every week. Defense rose up. Trenches looked pretty good for the most part through the whole game. I thought the offensive line actually had its moments where I was like, okay. And yet still the turnovers is what plague us. And unfortunately, we've sort of already had this conversation on the podcast many, many times, but even this one, talking about the quarterbacks, I think it's just as the year has gone on, our point after week 2, after the Colorado game, has been fully vindicated, which is the Casey Thompson conversation. The biggest mistake that was made with this rebuild, in my opinion so far, and in a lot of people's opinion so far, was not going with Casey Thompson. And you flash back all the way back to December. What were we talking about? We were saying, I like Rule. I like what he's doing so far. Figure out a way to keep Casey. build it around Casey. We like Casey. And then Casey gets kicked out of the door. And now look at the result. We have a great team, but it's quarterback play that is causing these issues for the most part. And then you look at Maryland, and it's like if we had their quarterback, we would have murdered him. You know what I mean? Like switch the quarterbacks, and we win easily.
Sure. So, and I think we even said that before the game.
Right.
Honestly, we were not sleeping on Tulia at all.
No. I called him to his brother, but he looks like to his older brother out there in the face. It's pretty crazy.
Sure. But see, I think minus the quarterback position, which is most college football teams don't have a great quarterback situation. Most of them are trying to figure it out. They have one serviceable guy, and even good teams, that have like the guy. How long has Michigan had a great defense, an okay offense, and then a quarterback that was just like, eh?
Yeah, true.
So it's hard to have that happen. Like, not everybody can be like Caleb Williams out there.
Yeah.
That being said, I think there's only been a couple times this season that the offensive play calling has gotten to a point where I think it lost us the game. There have been things that I wouldn't have done, but if it hits, then you're like, oh, wow, what a great call. It kind of like that. But it's become apparent that something that good coaches are able to do when you start off like the season, you're just not able to do what you thought you were going to do with the personnel that you have. Look at Alabama, what they've been able to do on offense now that they just adapted to the personnel that they had.
Absolutely.
They weren't trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. They adapted to that. And Satterfield has not been doing that. He's been trying to make all of those guys, pocket passers.
Yeah.
No, that's not going to happen. Okay.
Agreed.
He's not scheming for his personnel. He's still just trying to run his offense. He's trying to run his offense. And again, I think there's a conversation to be had to where whether that's fair or not because of all the injuries, especially in the skill positions, but you do have to adapt. You have to
no
adapt.
doubt.
And especially when you're like throwing a bunch of turnovers, the things that are working, just keep doing them.
Agreed.
Like the
feed
last
EJ.
drive.
Just keep feeding him, bro. Just keep feeding him it. Like
that last drive with Chuba, with feel bad for Chuba. They should never put him in that position to throw that interception right there. But you go all the way down the field, running the ball. Like he hit a pass here or there, but it was a run and drive.
Yeah.
All right. And then you get to the 6-yard line, first and goal on the 6, and you don't get another yard, and you throw a pick. So that's just the end of the game. That happened multiple times. We got in a position to where, I mean, you could try to take a deep shot. You could try to pass the ball. Just try to run, see if you can get to fourth and manageable, maybe quarterback sneak, go from there. But worst case scenario, you're in field goal range.
Agreed.
I understand the wind and whatever, but that's not something that you should be playing. Like, kickers are supposed to be able to account for wind. They're supposed to be able to do this. So get them in a decent shot for an angle and play for field goals. We're not a kill shot team. We're not a kill shot team. You have to take what you give us.
And we're trying to be what we're trying. Like, we keep trying to be that. I mean, on your point about the coaches adapting to their personnel, two things. One, in support of the coaches in Satterfield, and one against. Number one in support is it's hard to adapt to turnovers. I mean, we have 24 turnovers. How do you plan for that? Oh, well, we're going to have a turnover on second down, so we got it on third down. If we recover the ball, we're going to run this play. I mean, it's hard to schematically account for the amount of turnovers that we've had. But second of all, with that being said, they've proven it to you now. We've had 24 turnovers. 20 of them have been QB, like it's the QB, whoever was in the game at QB was at fault. So it gets to a certain point where, okay, we can't be a shot team. We can't be a pocket passing, fire it down the field team. So let's adapt a little bit to the fact that they've proven they're a turnover machine at this point. Let's give Emmett Johnson the ball. He's got the hot hand. Let's get Anthony Grant in the game, and let's get Josh Fleeks getting some carries too. But I mean, being Iowa is not a bad thing right now because our offense is not good enough to not be. It's not good enough to be that shot team. Iowa. I mean, what do they throw 10 passes a game? You know what I mean? What are they, 8-2, and they throw 10 passes a game?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we don't need to be like I've heard Connor from Corn Crazed. I've heard him say, "Well, people saying we just need to run the ball, they're out of their minds. You got to be able to pass the ball to win." I'm like, okay, well, if every time you pass the ball, you give it to the other team,
there's
like what are we talking about?
There's a schematic disadvantage that you have, and it's evident in the fact that it's not one player. There's a schematic thing there's something wrong there. There's a coaching thing wrong there.
Yes.
Because 4 interceptions by 3 different quarterbacks doesn't just happen. It doesn't. Yes. That's coach. That's a coaching thing, right? Whether he's, in there a little bit too much, not enough, or is he running other routes into another? Because a rub route's okay, but if you're doing deep ones where they're crossing at the right time, you know what you're going to do? You're going to bring safeties over, and you're going to bring the defensive backs into a position where they can make plays on the ball, which I have seen them
no doubt about it.
Right? So it gets to a point now where you look at it and you're just like, something's got to happen.
Yeah.
Something has to change, because this can't be a year after year after year thing. If Rule is going to give him the benefit of the doubt, which he probably will, just from the pure injury perspective. What are you going to do? As far as recruiting, what you need now? You know what you need. And I'm sorry, but I think some of the guys that we have coming in are not the answer.
I agree with that. We need to find somebody in the portal for sure.
We do.
Gotta find somebody.
We need to find just for the sake of not stalling out, right?
Right.
Now I want to make a change.
Yeah. So, now I want to mention something along this conversation that's like, it's worth mentioning, and it helps paint the whole picture. We do have a bunch of freshman wide receivers out there, and what happens when you have freshman wide receivers out there is the veteran adaptations that you sort of end up making throughout the game, like down and distance. I know the route tree is this, but I'm going to flatten this route out a little bit because this is the down and distance. And if you play enough with the quarterback will be on your same page, and you'll know he's flattening his route a little bit. Things like that, or rub routes, for instance. Rub routes in the physicality of it. I've never played receiver, but I would assume it helps to be a veteran knowing how to get through the scrum of a rub route, rather than like, okay, well, it's a technique thing, And so when we have those freshman receivers out there, things like that, I think account for probably some of these interceptions that we're talking about. QB and wide receiver just not on the same page.
Yeah.
But schematically, I agree. You can't put them in those positions if they're not going to make those plays. If they can't make those adaptations and veteran moves on the field, you can't put them in those positions.
No. And again, it's one of the reasons why. Listen, called a horrible game. He really, really did. A horrible game. Other games, I think he's had calls here or there. We've gotten some point. I've seen the process and everything, but all in all, was horrible. Just horrible calling.
Yes.
All game.
Yes.
But there's a lot of things going on. Like you said, we have freshman receivers, all those injuries. We have inconsistent quarterback play, and then on top of that, you have an offensive coordinator that seems to want to just run his style of ball,
no matter what. Yeah.
Like a Whipple style. Whipple didn't adapt either, but he had Trey Palmer, so he could just whenever he needed to. But we don't have that. We don't have that escape hatch.
No.
And
it's not quite to Whipple's level. I mean, Whipple was 40 run, 60 pass.
No.
I mean, we're still 65% run if you look at the play breakdowns.
I understand, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't pass. I'm really not. But there's a way to do it, and there's a way not to. And he's showing you the way not to.
Agreed.
You play to your quarterback's strengths. You always do. They still do it in the NFL. If they have a decimated offensive line, they move the quarterback outside the pocket, right? If they have a mobile quarterback. We have 3 mobile quarterbacks.
Agreed.
Move them outside of the pocket. Yeah.
Athletes.
And so you have them out there, and I know at least one of them throws better on the run.
Yeah,
Harbaugh throws way better on the run.
Well, it's like this. I mean, excuse me while I go on a rant for on something that I probably know nothing about. But when you're a quarterback and you're just sitting back there in the pocket like a statue, or just in the pocket, those quarterbacks that maybe are not the best athletes, but they're amazing quarterbacks. they might be able to do that because sitting in a pocket with all the chaos going on around you probably feels very counterintuitive. And if you're an athlete, you're like, I'm an athlete. I'm going to take what's going on right now into my own hands. And if you start out in the pocket, it's harder to be that athlete because you got people all around you, versus if you just put your athletes into athletic positions and have them make a play, then that's what we need, because we don't have quarterbacks. We have athletes who can throw the ball. That's what we have. So I agree with you. They need to get creative in the throw game as far as using the run game more to their advantage, using a little bit more play action, because it really seems like we use a little bit of play action and we use the option pass action. But it really just seemed the other day like if it was a pass, it was going to be a pass. If it was a run, it was going to be a run. You know what I mean? Like dropping 2-step back into the pocket.
They did throw some play action stuff in there, and ironically, those were the plays that Maryland was able to dial up pressure.
Interesting.
And it's just, it was just a bad.
Got to get Connor Stallions on our side.
Yeah, right. No, but I mean, you are right. I mean, getting people in athletic positions just to make a play, because look, it is easier. I don't care what you say. Whether throwing on the run or not, some people could do it better. Some people don't do it as well. But for me, in my experience, when I got outside the pocket, when I was rolling out and I was looking, I was able to see the field so much better than standing in the pocket, trying to see over those big guys, right?
Yeah,
trying
that's
to
a
read
big
a
aspect
defense,
of it. Yep.
and then making sure that your guy is going to be open or break open. So I don't think a lot of people realize, like, there's a certain trust factor that quarterbacks just have to have in their receivers. They don't always see them. They just know, okay, he's going to be there. Okay, boom, that's going to be open, or it's not. Like, so that's not all the time, but that does happen. Like, especially when you're in the pocket. So.
No doubt. I mean, I'm thinking of something kind of interesting right now. When is the last time we really, I have a name in mind, but when is the last time you really legitimately trusted a Nebraska quarterback in the pass game? And I don't mean just like, oh, he might make a play or he might throw an interception. Because to me, I think of like Tommy Armstrong was great, but I probably 80% trusted him in the pass game. Taylor Martinez was a good player, but I probably 60% trusted him in the pass game. Whereas I go back to Zach Taylor, and I think about Zach Taylor as quarterback. He was awesome. You look at some of those drives, he was making NFL level throws here and there. And we just haven't had a quarterback like that in so long that we can really trust in those passing situations.
Again, going back to my first comment, finding a quarterback and having a good quarterback situation in all levels of football, but really college football is hard. It really is hard. Because you even see in the NFL, like really crap teams will have good quarterback play. Like,
there's only 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Yeah. Whereas in college, there could be hundreds. I mean, you look at like Cameron Ward, right, who transferred to Washington State last year. He was at Incarnate Word, breaking records at Incarnate Word. And now that he had a tough last year at Washington State, but now Washington State's had a really good year this year, and he's playing really good. So you can find quarterbacks in all kind of places. You just got to know where to look. And to me, the only red flag from this whole situation is the the evaluation aspect of the quarterbacking situation. Because evaluating football players is one thing, evaluating a quarterback is another thing to me. And they evaluated really well. They got a lot of young guys in. You see people making impact all over our team that are very young. But from a quarterback perspective, they dropped the ball big time on that evaluation. So it's their time to prove that they can evaluate and find a good quarterback. Because while you're right, like finding a good college quarterback is hard, but like I'd take Hudson Card. I'd take Hudson Card from Purdue. I'd take Tommy DeVito from Illinois last year. I mean, some of these guys that can just operate. It's just operation. That's all it is. Like, we don't need anything special. Just need an operator. You know what I mean? And we have a bunch of athletes that can't operate, unfortunately.
Well, again, they're not being put in positions to thrive.
No doubt.
The first couple games, the first three games really that, well, not again, minus Michigan, but the first three starts that Harbaugh got wins. So you had Louisiana Tech, you had Northern Illinois, and you had Illinois.
Illinois, yeah.
Right? Those were his first three like wins.
Mm-hmm.
You look at that, the offense was trying to do something different. They were playing to his strengths. They weren't trying to do, and we played better. We did. And then they started trying to build onto it. Like, oh, maybe we can build everything off of him.
Yeah.
In mid-season. And I think that's what happens. Like they were like, oh, well, we can't become one-dimensional. We'll be easy to stop, blah, blah, blah. We need to scheme these guys. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I just think there's too much thinking going on.
Yeah,
There's
I mean, you're
not
really
enough-
easy to stop when you keep giving the ball to the other team.
Yeah. No, really. I just don't understand how they don't see that. I can see it. Other fans can see it, obviously. And I just don't understand sometimes coaching decisions. It's like pride. It is like a lot of, I don't know. I think I just lost Brooks. This is fun. There we go. All right. Well, while I wait for him to get back, yeah, no, I don't know why like coaching choices do what they do sometimes. But that being said, I think I should go to some positives here because spent a lot of negative time. The defense again played well enough to win. You give up 13 points, and it's just easier. It's easier to win when your offense always to score more than 13. Let me share some of these game stats here. 'Cause I haven't looked at this since Saturday. All right, let's see. So, I mean, they had 384 total yards. Maryland did to our 269. The defense got 3 turnovers. They got 3 turnovers, but we had 5. It's like whenever you take one step forward, one step back. I'm just beyond frustrated with that whole aspect of it. These ads are out of control, man. I mean, we even had more time of possession, and we're unable to do anything with it. Yeah, I don't know. It's getting to the point as a Nebraska fan that I have to really try to tamper my expectations for the next 2 games, and I hate that. Brooks's power went out. I guess it's storming down there or something. But it's getting to the point where I'm just feeling like you have to really like temper your expectations for the rest of the season. And now, granted, at this point, there's only 2 games left. But when you get to the point to where there's a little bit of that pucker factor now, you have 5 wins and you need 1 more to get bowl eligible. And you have to go through 2 teams that are historically the past couple of years, past decade, probably giving you problems. Like Wisconsin, doesn't matter how bad they are. They have never really been bad, but it doesn't matter. They've always played us close. And then Iowa too. So
Power went out.
Yeah.
Power went out.
Yeah.
That was a solid 5 minutes too.
Yeah.
It took a while for the Wi-Fi to kick back on.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I talked to myself for a little bit, but the last thing that I will say, I was talking about like getting down to the pucker factor with the game and everything, because you have 2 games left against 2 teams that always play us close. And it doesn't really matter. Like we haven't been good in the past decade, so they've always played us close. It doesn't really matter like how bad we are, and you get to a point where you only have one side of the ball. And it's not feeling very good.
So give me a quick summary thesis statement of what you said for positives so that I don't repeat what you said.
Well, my positives started to turn into negatives.
That's what happens with the loss. When we lose and we do positives, the positives end up turning into negatives, and when we win and we do negatives, the negatives end up turning into positives. Yeah. Anyway, but I'll say something for positive. Okay, defense. Yeah. I'll say something for positive that's kind of a little off the wall. I think it is a positive that Chuba got some reps and that we did get to see him play loose a little bit. We hadn't really seen him play truly loose the whole time he's been at Nebraska yet, and I thought he looked, for the most part, like a different quarterback. He was playing really, really good out there. That 91-yard drive was like we were all. I mean, I wasn't watching it live, but I bet everybody was just looking at each other like, "Holy crap! Is this about to happen with our third stringer? Like, let's go!"
Listen, and he was running with. He ran well too.
Yeah, he ran with authority.
I mean, he kept the drive alive. And
he's shifty,
man. Yeah,
like he's shiftier than I would say. He might be our as far as just like compact shiftiness. He might be our shiftiest quarterback, which is saying something because Jeff's pretty shifty, but like he's smooth shifty. Chuba is like water bug shifty. You know,
he's so shifty. His arm phases right through the ball.
I think his throwing motion looks a little better too, but let's talk about that last interception because I had a question about that. So I saw the well, I mean, because it's on the topic of Chuba, but I saw the interception and I'm just still confused about it because I mean, you watch the replay over and over again, and by all accounts, based on what Coach said today after looking at the film, like he was trying to get it to Billy Kemp. So that's what Malachi was probably thinking. But if you watch the replay, Malachi had a play on the ball. Got it. Yeah, Malachi had a play on the ball.
He could have at least touched it to where it wouldn't have been a direct interception. But.
No doubt. And I think he just thought there was someone open right behind him, which is why he was throwing it there.
And I understand the sentiment, but I also don't understand the sentiment because if you're on the 3-yard line and you catch that ball, you're walking into the end zone. So like, what are you gonna let it go over your head instead of just like? I saw that, but that's not how I read the play. Like I read it as a bad pass that forced in a situation and a bad call. So,
I mean, if he was, think about it this way: if we're being gaslit, which I doubt we are, but if we're being gaslit and he was actually throwing to Malachi on that play, what a stupid call to throw a crossing route in the red zone to a freshman. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not. I don't trust that play call at all, even if it wasn't what they said. Because corner route sort of makes sense. That's a ball where a veteran QB will throw it where only their player can make a play.
You throw it to the back pylon.
Yes,
with air under it.
But Billy flattened it too. He was like at the front of the end zone. So
it was just all around bad. I remember. Just like because Kemp made a good play to keep the drive alive and get I think it was almost a 30-yard catch.
Yeah, 28. I think 28 yards.
Yeah, 28
over the middle of the field.
Yeah, and that over the middle, and that was a good play. And then I started to get a little hype. Then I thought Emmett was gonna I thought he was gonna bust that run. I just did. And then I thought Chuba was gonna bust the run too. Like it was so close. We were so close.
3rd and 6. With a normal team, with any normal team that can just do normal things, 3rd and 6 is probably a passing down. Like you watch football, you see 3rd and 6, I'd say 8 in their ball. But in that situation with this team, let Emmett try to score. And if he doesn't score, just kick the field goal. You know what I mean? Like it's a situational thing. Like
your defense hasn't given up a touchdown since the first half. They were not going to give up a touchdown. They weren't.
They held the 3rd best offense in the Big Ten to 10 points up to that point. You know, It's a little
Now
ridiculous.
it's high, but then you put the pressure on them. They have to go down and they have to take a field goal to tie.
I just think that's another big negative talking about coaching because leading into the year, like we even talked about it, how Matt Rule sort of sounded a little bit like a baseball coach, baseball manager, talking about situational awareness and just knowing the different situations and down and distance. And it's like, well, part of situational awareness is how is my team playing? Like, what are they good at right now? As a coach, that's a very important piece of situational awareness. So in that 3rd and 6, that to me is the worst call of the game because I've thought about it a lot and you just can't you don't pass in that. We haven't been able to do it all game. I don't care who's in the game. Like
we haven't been able to do it all year.
But I mean, we had Chubb in the game, so maybe they were like, "Oh, he's got the hot hand. Maybe he'll make a play." But again, hard to put him in that situation.
You're putting him in that situation. And again, you're not. If you had run like a kind of like the first play they ran, where he ended up throwing it.
Mm-hmm.
If you run that exact same play again, after all that, like I think they took a timeout even. Like if you run that play again, I think it scores because they called outside pressure to that side, and I didn't even look back and see if like anybody was open or anything. But if you run that exact same play again, who knows? And then he gets out and listen. There, if you're going to pass, that's what I'm talking about. If you're going to pass, you don't let him sit there in the pocket, try to scan and then try to get it in there when he's been sitting on his ass all game. And he's had a couple good plays here or there. A lot of it through his legs. Some again, picked up another like a play for him here or there. And Emmett may had a couple great runs. Like just have an identity,
no doubt,
but not that one.
I mean, the interesting thing to me is like I don't know if they were expecting Chuba to be able to run like that because. I mean, from a schematic standpoint, I obviously wasn't. I didn't watch film or anything, and I wasn't paying attention close enough to like tell if like this is cover 2, there's a spot, stuff like that. But they might have stopped spying our QB once Chuba went in, and that might have been why we had so much success on his runs. But yeah, so negatives are play calling, turnovers. Heinrich got benched. Basically, he got quote hurt, but it was an opportunity for them to go with someone else. And then Jeff came in and had a spark, but I mean, then he just proved yet again who he was, and so they had to bench him too. And it's getting to the point with our quarterback situation where it's like, okay, is he gonna like all these guys have very short leashes? Is my point. All of these guys have very short leashes, and I don't know. I just wanted to big picture. Still on the QB situation because that's the big topic of this week, really. Who do you want to start? From this game, we'll talk about it in a future sense later, but going from this game, who do you want to start?
Going from what was said today in the press conference, it sounds like Harbor does have a little bit of a stinger on his ankle, and it's a little bit more serious than, it kind of looked at game time. I
just want you to say it out loud, buddy.
It's Purdy time.
Okay, so if this is your first time listening to the podcast, Blake has talked an immense amount of crap about Purdy's quarterback play. Not about him as a person. He seems like an awesome guy, to be honest. Great locker room guy. But as far as a quarterback, I'm honestly, and I've agreed with you for the most part, so I don't want to just throw you under the bus. But we've been not an advocate of Chuba on this podcast, but I think it's funny how it's sort of flipping because I agree with you. I would start Chuba from here on.
Yeah, and it has not like people. I always left the door open. People can change. People can adapt. I don't think Chuba was that person. Okay.
I can change.
No, but if you're trying to, again, I don't think he was the quarterback that could run the offense that we had last year. He just,
agreed.
That type
nobody
on
our roster could. Nobody could. Like, nobody.
Yeah. No.
Maybe if we still had Richie Torres, maybe.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
But yeah,
no, we actually
so it's It's Purdy. It's definitely
Purdy.
It's Purdy time.
It's Purdy time.
Because I don't even fault him for that last interception.
No.
You know, you have 9 out of 10 quarterbacks coming in that situation. They're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. But I know you're like if you're Purdy, I know you're fresh into the game, and sometimes down and distance type things sort of like slip your mind. If you're fresh into a game, you're just thinking about making a play. And from my money, it's like, I mean, if you're a quarterback in that situation, you got to know it's a tie game with 2 or 3 minutes left. Points. So in that situation, no matter what the call is, you throw the ball where only you sideline throw. Even if he's nowhere over there, you sideline throw it to somewhere where only your receiver could catch the ball or nobody. And so, yeah, that's disappointing. But again, it's his first drive, and he looked good up until that point. And Malachi, I really think he could have caught the ball, man. I think he's going to be thinking about that for a long time. Like,
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
You're right. But, on to the next one.
On to the next one, indeed. So what are your final thoughts? One final thought. Let's do that on this. What's your final thought on this game? Very frustrating game.
Yeah, my final thought is it's year 1, all right? And I know this is early to say something like this, but just with how Tony White has the defense rolling, just the amount of foundation that he can build off of this. If somebody were to be able to be poach him away in the offseason, it might be really rough.
Yeah,
it might be a really rough go, because
Well,
a good defensive coordinator is hard to find. It is.
But I mean, like, I trust Rule. He found Tony White the first time. I think he has other people he can find for a defense as well.
Yeah, he also found Satterfield because
I
they
agree
coached together before. That's the only
agree with
reason.
that.
Because
Yeah,
if
that's
you
the only
go
reason.
based off of his past couple of years of resume,
But he
Not
never
there.
coached with Tony White before, so he's proven that he can go outside of his circle. Like, that was the thing about Scott Frost. It always felt like somebody came to him recommended from somebody else, or they were already with him before. You know what I mean? And that's fine. You can get recommendations, but I mean, like, sometimes it takes a little bit of looking to find just the right guy. So if that happens, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see how they deal with it, because Tony White's the real deal. I mean, our defense has been so consistent this year, and if you just listen to his pregame fire up speeches and his press conferences, like, he's got head coach written all over him. But it could be like a Venables. It could be like a Brent Venables situation, where Brent was with Dabo for a decade plus. Same thing with Kirby and Saban. Kirby was with Saban for almost 10 years. So that could be a thing. And hitching your, like, in those two people's cases, hitching your wagon to a coach that you think is going to be successful can also be a path to get you one of those jobs that you really want. So, I mean, think about if Nebraska goes to the playoff or has a really successful year, something like that. Then at the end of the year, they look at the defensive stats. He's a candidate for a lot of jobs. And Nebraska's a place that can happen. So it just depends on what he's looking for. If he's looking to become the head coach of San Diego State or something like that, and then move up that way, that's one thing. But if he's looking to go the coordinator then head coach route, Nebraska's the place. So he's going to get paid a lot to be here. So
yeah, and if the offense comes out the next 2 games and look how they have the past 2 games, then I really do think that Zach needs to get fired. Even despite injuries and everything, good coaches find a way to adapt. It just shows that he can't. And it would show that Rule isn't messing around, that he's going to hold his coaches as accountable as he wants to hold his players.
yes.
So,
Well, I don't know if I'm there yet. I'm getting there, but I don't know if I'm there yet.
I'm not calling for his head right now.
Yeah, it's dependent on these last 2 games.
The next
you're
2
saying.
games.
Yeah. If they don't improve at all, I don't know if I'm there yet. Matt Rule said something in his press conference today that basically hinted at that, like, he understands people are calling for Sat's job. He said basically, like, I mean, do you understand how hard it is to start out with a new guy a new coordinator at any position and redo your terminology? You're starting from ground zero. And he basically said, like, I know this guy. We've had success. Like, We're gonna figure it out. And I just really hope it's not like Scott Frost and Mario Verduzco or Scott, any of those coaches that just stuck around when the results weren't there. So yeah, I'm almost there. We'll see. I mean, it could be a long off season if we drop these next two. But yeah. So my one final thought is we're 5-5. Maryland was a very winnable game, but I still think out of those last 4 games, Maryland was probably the most beatable team on our schedule matchup wise. Just because like we have many monkeys on our back as Nebraska fans, but one of the big monkeys on our back, well, the biggest monkey on our back is going to a bowl, but the other big monkey on our back, littler monkey, is Wisconsin. And Iowa, we beat them last year, but that was like one of the only times that was one of 2, I think. One of 2 times we beat them. So both of those teams are monkeys on our back that we got to conquer, bowl game or not. So, and the thing that makes me sick to my stomach sort of is there's going to be about 8 teams, 8 5-7 teams this year that are going to go to bowl games, and Nebraska is likely to be one of them. That's kind of the interesting thing, and
I would hate to win it.
So
off of I would hate that.
I agree. I completely agree. But look at it this way: when did the Scott Frost tenure really like completely end? There's no life left. Like it ain't gonna happen. When they said no to going to a bowl game in 2020, whether they knew it or not, within that locker room and within that program, when they said no to going to a bowl game, they sealed their fate. Whether it was because that's not a good culture move or a good move for the athletic director to see that you're invested in your program. So that was when the Scott Frost tenure really ended. So if we go 5-7 this year and we get a bowl bid, they're not going to say no. Okay, they're not going to say no. So I do appreciate that. I will be on their side for saying yes to going to a bowl game at 5-7. It would still just feel dirty though. You know what I mean? It would just feel dirty. And in the year 6-7, slightly under 500, if we win the bowl game, that would just feel dirty. We got to get one of these games. And for my money, if I had to pick one, I'm with y'all on Iowa hate. I don't like Iowa either, but it would be Wisconsin and Madison. Because to me, that's the bigger monkey on our back right now.
The second half of that, it's the in Madison part. But
yeah, in Madison for sure. But I just think Wisconsin in general, like we got to beat these guys. We haven't even beat them yet, bro. Like this is crazy. Yeah, you're sitting there thinking, I don't think we've beat them since we joined the Big Ten.
We have.
When?
One of Bo's years.
That's right. But it was like a moot point that year because we went to the championship and then they beat us by 40
points. And then
points.
They beat the crap out of us.
Yeah. So it didn't feel like we beat them.
Yeah, but that was the last time we beat them.
Yeah, you're right. I did forget about that one. But yeah, we've only beat them one time. That's ridiculous. Especially, I mean, Wisconsin hasn't been all that. They've had some good teams, but like they haven't been Russell Wilson, Wisconsin this whole time. So we got to beat them. But yeah, so that's my one final thought.
Well, no, you're right. But we'll see.
We'll see.
That's going to be it for us today on the Cornhusker Corner. Always remember that there's no place like
this podcast.